I've been ministering for over 40 years. And over 40 years, have a lot of experience, have a master's in theology, a doctorate in theology, a bachelor's in biology. So I've got some sense of education, but sometimes that has to be taken further because we have to understand what it is that the Lord is doing. And we can think we know, and in reality, we've missed part of what God is doing in the earth. And a lot of times we do that because we misunderstand words and we misunderstand the season. And there are just a lot of things that we don't make the connection. Back in 2016, I saw a conference in Florida that was hosted by Turning Point, and the leader of Turning Point then was Charlie Kirk. And Charlie Kirk is 29 years old, but he's really a powerful young man with Candace Owens, who was a liberal, a black African-American liberal who became, she woke. She woke to what was happening to her cultural group and came alive, and then she began to be a conservative with Turning Point. And Turning Point is an organization that reaches high school youths as well as college. But here's the thing, as I watched this conference, and they were really, preparing a conservative message to go out through these young people into the colleges, into the universities and the high schools, they were doing it to counter the spirit that is being foisted upon us from a different political persuasion, a different world view. And it's not like just two friends fighting over some particular ideology. It's way deeper than that, way more serious, way more powerful. And so when I saw this young man taking a stand, and he had some different speakers, and I saw all these young people, several thousand, and their zeal for patriotism, but it wasn't just patriotism or conservatism. Most of them were Christians, but not all of them. Now, I'm just telling you something I saw 2016 before the election. And so when I saw that, and then I saw this guy, Donald Trump, up against 19 people vying for the presidency in 2016. And I said, I like this guy. He's pulling the political correctness wallpaper off our nation, if you know what that means. And I said, this is interesting. This guy's out of the box. And so that was one thing that was going on. But then I'm watching Charlie Kirk, and I felt like the Lord said to me that this is revival outside the camp. Now, this is where Christians are going to have their heads expanded because we don't know what that means. We had this idea of revival as being a stadium where there's signs, wonders, and miracles, and people are saved, and everybody's happy and worshiping. But this was a completely different kind of experience led by Charlie Kirk, who is a Christian, a powerful Christian, very smart young man, incredibly smart. And he is championing a movement to take back the universities, to take back the educational system, to change the culture of our country, because at his young age, he realizes that we're on a collision course with things that are so destructive that if we go down that road, we may not return. And so Christians, we say that's good for them, but we don't want to be involved in politics. We don't want to get all dirty with all that kind of stuff. And after all, Trump is a womanizer, right? He was, according to his own mouth, but how many of us men weren't womanizers sometime in our life? But here's the point. What I saw taking place with these young people and with Charlie Kirk, I said, this is the kind of revival I want to go to, because this is a revival that I would categorize as a revival of reformation. So it's not in the clouds. It's so earthy that you can miss it, because here are some people who want to bring the gospel of the kingdom of God, though they may not know it. They want to bring it to bear on the earth that they're living in. It's a true manifestation, a true fulfillment of Jesus' words when he said, "Pray, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." What does it look like when God is moving on the earth? And why is it that we as the church have so often segregated and the sacred from the secular, as if the two cannot live in the same room together? When in reality, as Christians in a nation that was founded upon the Word of God, we are a Christian nation. Though we may lose the populace, the foundations, the compass of the nation is written on stone in Washington, that we are an expression of the sovereignty of God resting on people. And our nation is not a nation of evil people who are old white men with white hair who have created oppressive systems, but we've created a government that rests upon the nature of Christ as it's manifested in people. If the leaders are righteous, the country will prosper. If the leaders become unrighteous, and if the leaders carry other worldviews, including a Muslim worldview or Hindu worldview or witchcraft worldview or secular humanistic worldview, then the country cannot survive because the fuel it needs is righteousness. And so one of the things that's happened is that we as the people of God have bought into the secular narrative that there's a separation between church and state. We've misunderstood what that is. We bought and drank the Kool-Aid. And in so doing, we forfeited our responsibility and left a vacuum that's filled now. It can be filled by wickedness. And that's already happening. We leave a vacuum because we had been playing church and enjoying our little narcissistic Christian life. I'm talking to myself, to all of us, and I've been thinking about this for 3 or 4 years. And the point that I'm making is that when I say that our country, let me just stop here and I'm going to go on with Charlie Kirk, but when our country is a Christian country, that concept is warred against. We like to say, no, we're a country of immigrants, we're a country of different religions. You can do whatever you want to do in this country, but the fatherhood of it, the leadership of it, has to be a Judeo-Christian worldview, a Judeo-Christian perspective, a Judeo-Christian principle that's in the people that are the leaders. It's not enough to have it written in the Constitution or in the Federalist Papers or in the Declaration of Independence or the Bill of Rights. It's got to be written, but it has to be written on the tablets and the hearts of people. And so this week, our president elects this woman who's a conservative constitutionalist. That means she's pro-life, and she wants to guide according to the founding document. But another thing that makes her a prime candidate for this is that she has the worldview that goes with the Constitution. So she doesn't want to change the Constitution to fit with her own particular view of the world. She believes, as a good Catholic, in God. She's pro-life. She's pro-children. She's pro-family. She's pro-man and woman as the way we define gender. She's pro-family. I already said that. She's probably pro-gun because she understands this thing that we're resting upon. And so for the church to think that we are above all of this, or we can't get dirty thinking about this, is absolutely a lie. And it's a lie that we believe because no one taught us otherwise. We believed that there was a separation of church and state. We believed that politics is all It's going to be what it is, but we're going to fly away, so why should we worry about it? When in reality, the worst thing that anybody can do, and the most destructive and the most sinful thing, is to relegate the responsibility we have for our family and for our community and our nation, and to give that away as if it's not our responsibility when it is. The Constitution came after the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence of 1776 said that we basically had it with the tyranny of Great Britain and the fact that they are enslaving us. And so here are our grievances, and here is the reason why we believe we cannot live under this tyranny any longer. That was the Declaration of Independence, which most people have never even read. But then there comes, a few years later, a convention, and they make a constitution, which is like the bylaws of how the Declaration is going to be lived out. And so the very first amendment to the Constitution of the United States in 1789, and this stuff is so more important than anything we've ever seen or believed or understood. It's so important that the children of the late 1800s would memorize all of this stuff, because the fathers, the founding fathers, knew that if we did not know the foundation upon which we stand, then others will take it away from us. But you know who they'll take it from? You'll die and go to heaven, but your children will have to live possibly under tyranny, and there may be 160 million children destroyed, because there's, with the philosophy that is wanting to come in and sweep away our past and sweep away what has allowed us to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what's coming to take that away will bring in its place slavery and death. It's always been that way. That's the historical record, and there's no reason to think it would be any different. Matter of fact, it's already snuck up upon us, and it's already happening. And so this thing of separation of church and state is so very important. And this is like a little side sermon. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment, and the original wording was an establishment of denominations, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of press, or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. But I just wanted to stop just a moment on this idea. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of denomination. Later, in the minds of the founding fathers, they also inserted the word religion. So religion, denomination are somewhat synonymous in the founding fathers' mind. And so what they were saying is this, simply. They had just come from Britain, where they'd been there 200 years. They were breaking away from Britain, where King George had made a law that if you're not part of the Church of England, then they could kill you, cut your ears off. And so the other sects, denominations of Christianity, were oppressed. And they tried to make a law and a template to make everybody fit into one place. They assumed everybody would be Christians, but they wanted to have one denomination. And so the founding fathers, from the day that they started the Declaration of Independence and began to pray together, realized that they had Congregationalists, Quakers, they had Puritans, they had the Pilgrims, they had the Anabaptists, and they had these different denominations of Christianity. And they realized that there was tension among these different groups, because in those days, people, if you were a Congregationalist, you were a Congregationalist. And if you were an Anabaptist, then you were an Anabaptist. In fact, there was a time when the Lutherans killed the Anabaptists because they were the wrong denomination. Think about that. It was pretty serious. And so the government, these men that founded the government that is giving you the umbrella that you're living under right now, these guys said, look, there's one thing Congress will not do. It will not make a law that says this country has to be a certain denomination. But what was implied was, by all of the writings and the men who produced the government that we're a part of, it was implied that we were all Christians. Of course we were. And that's really what we were in the beginning. The majority of the country was Christian in nature, in their allegiance. They feared God and they worked righteousness. And that's one of the reasons this country has been a light set on the hill and has been the greatest influence for good of all the countries that have ever been ever established. And the reason is it's built upon the nature of God in Christ, in His Word, in men and women who believed it. And they believed it so much, people, that they gave their lives. They lost their lives. They gave their lives. They shed their blood. They lost their money. They had their world turned upside down because they took a stand. As King George says, it was a manly stand. And so they didn't just confess what they believed. They put their bodies in a place of harm to make a stand. And so Christians, as Christians, we get confused in this arena. But those guys were Christians too. Out of the 54 founding fathers, most of them had been to either Harvard, Princeton, or whatever. And in those days, those were institutions to raise up people who preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, here's why this is important. How many of you have children? It's because we have children, we have a responsibility to pass on the truth of the foundation on which our children will stand. Our posterity is what makes a conservative. The reason we're conservatives is because we believe that we not only have a responsibility to those who are passing into the age to come, who are dying. In other words, we've received something from somebody. We have a responsibility to give that stewardship to our children, because only an understanding of it and only righteous expression in our culture will cause us and cause them to have a future and a hope. Without that, look at any country in the world that lives as a socialist, communist, tyranny kind of country, government, and it oppresses and destroys. And if you want your children to have that, then you're at a place you can hand them off nothing. Don't give them anything. Just spend your life going to church, worshiping the Lord. I'm going to go to heaven. But your kids have to live here when you're gone, and their children's children. And the beautiful thing about our country is that because of the governmental layers, it is self-correcting. And we've seen that as we gave 1 million young men and women, we gave their blood to destroy slavery in this country. And we've done a lot of things like that. We've done it in World War I, World War II. We've done it in the Korean War. And today, South Korea has freedom and success and have been lifted up out of poverty because our people went there on their soil and gave their lives so that they could have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's just an overflow. But we have a responsibility to our own country and to our own family. And this is why I was just making this point about the separation of state and religion. That's a misunderstanding. It does say we're not going to form a denomination, but it's not saying we're not going to be Christian. We already are Christian. It's already written in the letters that these men wrote and in the things that they said, the stuff they wrote on stone, the things that Abraham Lincoln said. That was an assumed assumption. Our government should not be a secular government. It was never intended to be that way. It can't operate as a humanistic, secular government swept of all sense of moral goodness. The church is the moral power of our world, and if we take that out, we leave a vacuum for every kind of wicked bird. So listen, this is important to me because There's no other instrument that God has given us more powerful than the reformation of our culture to preserve our posterity. And not only our posterity, but the posterity of children in their mother's wombs before they're even born. We have a whole system ready to rip them out if they're inconvenienced. And we don't want mothers to do that. We want them to understand that these babies are worth keeping and that there are people who want these babies. There's a line a mile long of people who want to adopt children. So there's no reason that we can't work this out. And so there's so much misunderstanding. And so our country was designed to move forward on the nature of Christ in men and women. And if you fill our government up with Muslims, with Hindus, with people with other worldviews, not that they can't serve, they have every right to, but we as the citizens make a grave error. We make a mistake when we want to elect people who are not carrying the righteous nature of God as revealed in His Word. And this is where Donald Trump has just nominated this woman. His nomination, whether you like it or not, his nomination of this woman is a manifestation of the kind of character that has to operate to make our world operate.